I would like to thank publisher Deep Silver and developer Fishlabs for this free review copy of Chorus. Chorus is a 3D spaceship shooter, although its gameplay has a little less in common with rail shooters like Star Fox or Panzer Dragoon, and is more in line with a traditional aerial combat game, like Ace Combat or that Top Gun game that I reviewed last year. However, Chorus is anything but traditional. It seems their main goal was to take the genre in a different direction, creating a sort of open-world RPG complete with various gear to equip, plenty of optional side quests, and even some magic attacks to spice up the battles. Personally, I don't think the whole package comes together all that well, but it is a pretty good game during its better moments. I'm not gonna give it a wholehearted recommendation, but for those who are into the genre and want something more unusual, this might be worth looking into. Chorus takes place in some impossibly far-off future where humanity has settled faraway galaxies. In a way, it's kind of similar to Star Wars. Chorus revolves around a relationship between technology and religion, where advanced weaponry stands alongside magical abilities. The main plot revolves around a man known as the Great Prophet who leads the Circle, an army of formidable fighter pilots, as he attempts to rule the universe by bringing forth eldritch monstrosities called the Faceless. The main character, Nara, was one of the Great Prophet's best fighters until she realized that his goal wasn't all about peace and salvation. After recluding herself into exile for several years, her new home and friends are attacked by the Circle, leading her to recover Forsaken, her slumbering Circle ship and sentient AI. The two work together to fight off against their former army, rediscover Nara's magic abilities, and put an end to the Great Prophet's ambitions and the invading Faceless. It's a lot to take in, and I'm only scratching the surface. Chorus has a ton of story, dialogue, and lore, and it never stops shoving it in your face. It's clear that the development team Fishlabs was very proud of the world they created, and I was kind of getting into it, but a big part of what kills the game is how overbearing the story is. There is just so much dialogue that I ended up tuning out after a while. I do think the setting is pretty cool, it just needed a better director to present it all more efficiently. The voice acting isn't fantastic, but it is serviceable. Compared to the likes of Daymare 1998 and Tormented Souls, you can tell that the actors in Chorus are actually trying to give this a fair shot. Visually, the game looks good. I'm playing the PlayStation 5 version, which probably helps a little bit. The very few face and body models are far from the best I've seen, but they are at least good enough. The spaceships look really nice, while still being simplistic in design and easy to read in the heat of battle, which becomes important as different ship types come into play. The music is alright when it is used, nothing much to say here. They probably took it a bit further than necessary with the operatic vocals, but nothing poorly made. Overall, the presentation isn't half bad. The story and setting are both the biggest focus and the biggest downfall, but the other aspects pull their own way too. It does look and feel like a budget title at $40, but the team wasn't slacking when they made this game. It's respectable and well put together. The gameplay is what intrigues me the most, and it saddens me that it's both overly designed and it never manages to reach its full potential. For starters, it takes a while to get to the real meat of the game. Combat involves chasing, braking, and slow U-turns for way too long. And I was worried that this was just going to be how the fights are in this game. Thankfully, one of the first abilities you'll unlock is being able to drift, and this opens up the game a lot. By drifting, the ship will continue to move in one direction, but the player can aim wherever they wish, allowing for free aiming while staying mobile and preventing the need to have to directly tail behind a target. It's a little bit slow paced, but it works well enough, and I found the combat in general to be pretty fun. As the game progresses, more and more weapons and abilities are added to the player's repertoire, although it does get to the point where it feels more like bloat than anything else. To make matters worse, it's essentially using a color-coded combat system. You ever play the Ninja Theory Devil May Cry reboot? Well, Chorus is trying something kinda similar. If the enemy's health is red, use your machine guns. If it's orange, then use the missiles. If they have a shield indicated by blue health, you'll need to disable it with a laser weapon first. There are also magical abilities, but these aren't designed so much to give the player more freedom in combat, rather it's just to deepen the Simon Says gameplay. The Storm attack stuns enemies and instantly depletes their shields, but it's mainly introduced to deal with a specific enemy that's too fast for the laser cannon. Otherwise, the laser cannon works well enough on everyone else. Same goes for the Star. It's cool to be able to ram into enemies, and it works well enough against most targets, but it's, once again, introduced to deal with a very specific type of enemy. You also have a move called Leap, which teleports the player directly behind an enemy ship. Admittedly, that one's kinda cool, even if it does feel like cheating. While all those attacks being tailor-made for specific enemies is one thing, encouraging the player to play in very specific ways is a separate pet peeve of mine. There's a checklist of challenges to accomplish, and completing them provides various upgrades, essentially boiling down to higher offensive and defensive stats. So even if you do want to keep the combat simplistic, you're still encouraged to look for situations where you can make every ability work in order to complete these arbitrary challenges. I found this to be both unnecessary and distracting. Instead of playing the way that I wanted to play, I was instead reacting to color-coded health bars while also looking for opportunities to achieve those specific challenges. Perhaps strangest of all is how the defensive maneuvers work. As long as you're boosting at full speed, then the ship's defenses are increased and the enemy AI seems to purposely miss their shots far more often. That being said, you turn very poorly while going at full speed, but this same effect, the increased defense and magically poor enemy AI, also carries over to the first few seconds of adrift, allowing you to more easily turn at full speed without putting yourself in danger. I get that the idea is that staying mobile will make you a harder target, but it's achieved by making the enemy miss on purpose. It's a shame because the combat is almost there, and I do find it fun to constantly go back and forth from boosting to drifting. But there are also too many elements that are tacked on, artificial, and unnecessary. Like I said earlier, the combat can be really good during its best moments, in particular with the boss fights. This is where some of the game's creativity can really shine. One-on-one dogfights aren't too special, they're basically just beefier regular enemies with a unique gimmick or two, but I found the larger targets to be a lot of fun. Navigating around a large battleship to hit its various weak points on both the outside and inside makes for some pretty exciting battles. My favorite boss was this giant monster, as it tests you on a variety of maneuvers and combat abilities while presenting its attacks to you in unusual ways. Due to how easy it is to die, you can find yourself retrying often due to unforeseeable enemy attacks, especially on the higher difficulties, but the game is forgiving enough with its checkpoints that it's not too much of a struggle to complete the game. It doesn't sound half bad, and I wish I could leave it at that, but here's where the game really starts to get on my nerves. For starters, it's an open world game. That's weird enough for an aerial combat game where you never leave the ship, so you literally just fly up to other pilots hovering in space and talk to them. This gets really silly when you observe a public debate, only to find that they still remain within their ships even in the venue. Aside from the peculiarities of how the genre is utilized here, it's a pretty typical open world game, for better and for worse. Most of the side quests are your typical point A to point B affair, and they all start to seem the same after a while. Some of them don't have much combat, if at all, And the really small ones might not even require movement, if you can believe that.
Our sublight drive's calibration data for this region is corrupted. We can't risk using it as we might steer into something. Or someone. Can you please send us calibration data to reach the closest station?
Of course. We should be able to deal with this quickly.
We're clear. We should be able to take it from here. As promised, here's your reward.
The biggest issue, though, is the ridiculous amount of dialogue and lore that the game presents you with. It's surprisingly overbearing. The game can go on for so long, with characters just chatting away with each other, or as Nara looks into the memories of those who have died. It feels like half the game takes place outside of combat. That half doesn't have any real gameplay to it. And while I enjoy the setting, the story and characters aren't quite enough to grab me. Certainly not for such an extended period. If they toned this aspect down and streamlined the story, then I think I would have liked the game a lot more. But as it stands, there's way too much downtime in between the gameplay segments. You also get money for doing missions or finding boxes of cash scattered throughout the world. And this can be put towards upgrading your armor, buying new weapons, or buying accessories. Not a bad idea on its own, but the game isn't balanced around this in mind. For starters, nothing you buy is any better than what you're awarded with from the side quests, so that's kind of a moot point. The individual accessories also aren't strong enough on their own to justify mixing and matching. What you want to do instead is go for set bonuses that provide unique abilities. That might sound pretty cool, except when you realize that the customization the weapons and accessories are supposed to provide is made pointless once you've found a set bonus that you like. Either way, I played through the game on the hard difficulty, and I never spent money once, not even on defense upgrades. Although that would have been the best stuff to buy. The last thing worth bringing up are the maps. I sure hope you like asteroid fields because that's 80% of the game. You never go to a planet's surface and not a whole lot of time is spent indoors. It's just a ton of empty space with floating rocks in between. Don't get me wrong, they do make it look great, but that doesn't change the fact that there isn't really much to the level design, so to speak. The tutorial level is some kind of ruined space station, and it goes to show that more variety is possible, but it's so rare for the developers to flex those level design muscles, outside of the occasional temple, which doesn't amount to much anyway. The last area of the game is actually a city, and it's a breath of fresh air compared to everything else, but it's too little, too late, and it's still mostly empty space. I don't know why this needs to be an open world game. It doesn't add enough to the gameplay to support its implementation. Well, I've harped on this game enough. It might sound like I kind of hate it, but I don't really. I had a pretty good time with it. It's a shame that every one positive aspect is hindered by 2 or 3 that shouldn't even be a factor, but the positives do manage to barely outweigh the negatives. There's not much in the way of additional content either, aside from picking up on any side quests you may have left behind. No New Game Plus, no boss rush, or even some kind of an arena mode. There is a permadeath difficulty selection, which is a hell of a challenge considering how long this game can be, but it still boils down to just playing the whole game over again. For the most part, I think it's okay to skip out on this one. But if you're really looking for a spaceship shooter and this one caught your eye, then I don't think this is a bad game at all. Thanks for watching my review on Chorus.